You're listening to the Wealth Mindset Show, where Hicks and Zerker Capital Management's team of finance professionals, portfolio managers, and a life coach come together to tackle complex topics in finance and retirement planning so you don't have to. From investment strategies and wealth management to tax planning, retirement income, and aligning your money with your values and purpose, the Wealth Mindset Show offers the tools to thrive.
All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Wealth Mindset Show, where the Hicks and Zerker team helps you manage wealth, navigate retirement, and make smart decisions for a secure, meaningful future. I'm Austin Wilson, Chief Investment Officer at Hicks and Zerker Capital Management.
I'm Josh Robb, Director of Wealth Management here at Hicks and Zerker Capital Management. And joining us today is Scott Miller, our life coach for the Refocus coaching part of our firm. So we are going to talk about mentoring and why and what that is, and then why that's important. And then really how this relates to is when you talk about your area of kind of the non-financial aspect, one of the ideas is passing on a legacy.
Yeah.
And that's more than money. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But then also, how do you handle the money when that's passed on? And mentoring can be a part of that.
Yeah. So I guess this leads us to the discussion of, we in our industry spend so much time, and this is why we, brought Scott aboard, but money is what financial advisors talk about, what we can plan for. And honestly, it's the most straightforward part of our job because it's numbers, it's math. It's stuff most people can, get their mind around, but there's a lot of the discussion that involves not financial side of things. And that's where Scott comes in at Hicks and Zerker. So he helps guide, clients and friends and people we know towards some fulfillment outside of the financial side of thing, specifically in that second half of their life, right?
That's right.
But this thinking applies throughout life.
It does.
And what we're talking about today is really talking to your kids and talking about not the money side of things, but leaving behind wisdom, instilling values, and being, a mentor is one of the things we're going to be talking about to your children. So Scott, talk a little bit about how that kind of weaves into what you do.
Yeah, so we have 4 pillars that are kind of the foundational topics that in our workshops and in everything that we do. And pillar number 4 is called Leave a Legacy. And it's in that pillar where we really talk about mentoring. And I just wanted to share our definition of what we use when we talk about legacy. And so we define it this way: something meaningful that's handed down from someone in the past. That's pretty basic. Now, we took this next to this definition from John Maxwell. He said it can be tangible. So that's the physical resources. That's what you've been talking about, Austin, the money, your stuff. Well, how are you going to hand that on down?
This was your grandma's.
Exactly.
Yours,
And by the way, our kids don't want any of that stuff, right? They don't want any of those things anyways. But then he also talked about the intangible. And he goes, this is what you leave instilled within people. And that's what we talk about. We really encourage people not to just think about the tangible things, but the intangible. And we've said that really studies show that that's a lot actually more meaningful and purposeful when you can pass on to the next generation something from within. These are like values and work ethics and just all kinds of things that we're going to talk about.
So I think one thing to get in our minds now is that this is something that takes intentionality.
It does.
It's not something, I think a lot of people will just go through life and assuming, my kids are going to instill the values and the legacy that I want just passively, right? But that's not necessarily, you're not going to get the outcome you want if you just put all your hopes and dreams that that's going to happen, right? You have to be very intentional about this. It's not going to just happen. But the question I have, Scott, is where do you start with all this?
Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about, a lot of times in our workshops, we just talk about taking the first step, that small little step. So that's it. A lot of times people think it's got to be this huge plan, this big ordeal, or I've got to have this huge family mission statement, which that can be okay. But a lot of times it's just really small, little intentional things. So like, for instance, all of my kids and my grandkids are going to be at my house. So I've been thinking in the last couple of weeks, how can I be intentional about that short? It's going to be short too. It's not going to be very long.
It's going to go fast.
It's going to go fast. And then you've got grandkids screaming and babies crying. But I'm going to try to be intentional like this, whether it's just a small little moment of time. to just ask them about how things are going in their life, and then just trying to instill some wisdom into their lives.
And taking advantage of those opportunities when they came up, so being ready. So for instance, just the other day, Noah, my oldest, comes home from school and he's like, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" I said, "What?" He goes, "At school, I was walking from one class to another, and on the ground, there was $100 bill." This is a true story.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah." Wow. And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "What did you do?" And he goes, "I picked it up and took it to the office."
Yeah.
And he said, "I turned it in and said, somebody lost this." And then went on with his day. And then at wrestling, a bunch of his friends were making fun of him, like, "You just gave up $100. And he's like, "It wasn't mine."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference, right? And where did he learn that from? He had to have seen it somewhere. And so that was an opportunity for me to reinforce that as well. I told him that was the right thing to do.
Yep.
And I appreciate you being honest about that and reinforcing that. But that's picked up. And did I ever, there was never a conversation where I sat down and said, if you find $100 on the ground, you turn it in. Right? Because, if there's a penny on the ground, you pick it up and you're like, oh, a penny. Where's that break point? You don't, every penny you find on the ground, take it to the office and say, hey, I found a penny on the ground. Yeah. No one cares. Yeah. But there's a point where it's like, you know what? Somebody's going to miss this. Yeah. It's not mine, and I should turn it in. And so you find those opportunities, you're intentional about it, and then you reinforce it when they do it right along the way.
And I think that these, as your children age, and I have very young children, so this is obviously a very different situation than Scott's at as his children are grown, but this looks different at different stages of life.
Yes,
and
exactly right.
I think you have to be, things we don't necessarily view it as mentoring, as our children are 1, 3, and 8, right? Yeah. Almost 3. Yeah. And it's not mentoring. That is just, I'm trying to make sure you do the right thing. Parenting. Stop making messes. Yes, please go to the bathroom on the toilet. Yeah. Say please and thank you, and give your grandma a hug when she says goodbye or whatever. Like, that's what mentoring can kind of look like as they're young. But as they start to develop, emotionally and mentally, that takes a turn where it's more about wisdom and less about do this, do that, right?
Very true.
There's a bit of a shift. And so I think that it's very specific, at different ages, what that looks like.
Yeah. And I always visualize mentoring being outside of the parents. Now, parents can mentor, but like when I look at my life growing up, I had 2 great role models as my parents. But when you asked me to name a mentor, I would choose someone outside of that because I saw them as role models and good examples, but they were my parents parenting me. Right. And then a mentor was someone who took effort and didn't have to be in my life and chose to be in my life. And I've always designated those 2. Now, parents can mentor and train and raise up and bring that legacy piece. But to me, a mentor's, in a sense, is like an outside influence coming in. That's how I've always seen it.
And this was Josh jumping the gun on something we were going to talk about later. Yes. As an FYI, so thank you for that. Yeah. So I guess practically speaking, Scott, how did mentoring look like for you growing up? Who influenced you early, and how did that look for you?
Well, I think I kind of thought about it in 3 different stages. So I think from 0 to 18, it was my parents. Obviously they were very influential. I think they say that really by the age of 12, most children have developed their worldview by that time.
Right
so
in there.
How they look at the world and so there's so much that can be accomplished. Just what you talked about, Austin. A lot of times initially it's just discipline, but then it's training, coaching, all those things that come with parenting. So, I mean, my parents instilled hard work. And they were both Amish, came from that kind of a culture. And so I learned just a really good work ethic with them. I think faith was a big part of it too. Obviously, they introduced me to who God is and taking me to church and all those kinds of things. And then education. Because they didn't get very many opportunities in education, they made education really important. Yeah. Then I think after that, after I kind of left for 8 years to go to college and then on to dental school, it was coaches, professors that I had in my life that really had a lot of great, educators and coaches that really came alongside of me and really helped me. After that, then once I kind of got out of dental school and moved here to Findlay, it was really older men then that really kind of like poured into my life. And that was so big. I was 25 years old, starting a dental practice. Yeah. And I had another dentist in my office, Matt Kettinger, who was such a big part of just mentoring me, showing me the ropes. I watched a lot of what he was doing in his family. He poured into my life. But then other men too, like in my church and in around me, I just had some really, really good that shared not only the things that they did well in life,
Yep.
but also they were willing to share their mistakes
Right.
too with me, and kind of give me that wisdom that I needed at age 25.
So does desire and practical application of having a mentor stop when you're 60?
No, we still need that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's never really stopped unless maybe once you get to your 80s and 90s, really you're kind of just cruising by that time, and it's
who's
like
older and wiser than you at that point? Yeah.
But no, even at 62, which is where I'm at now, I'm still looking to older men. In fact, I'm just this afternoon, I'm going to meet with a guy who's 83 years old, and we're going to have coffee together, and I'm just going to ask him a lot of questions about, why he's still working, and I just want to know about his life. And so, I just think there's a lot of wisdom that you can get from just asking people about their lives.
What about you, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on what area of my life, of course. Yeah, early on, parents were great. But then I think in junior high and high school, I had some really great coaches from sports, football coaches, track coaches who really instilled a lot of hard work ethic in me, and just that you have to work hard for things to work out.
Yeah.
And the work you put in is going to pay off. These sort of thinkings that really have carried me through a lot of things I've done. College, I had some great professors and stuff like that as well. But I think it kind of circles back to during certain periods of your life where I would say now my dad is again probably my mentor that I go to for wisdom, for things like that.
Yes.
Where there was probably a period where we weren't at that level of relationship. Now we're back there, and I call him 3 times a week to ask about random things in life and wisdom. So I think that those things can take different seasons. And I think that when you're in your teens and 20s, your parents aren't necessarily the coolest sometimes, right? They don't know
what
anything.
they're talking about.
They don't know anything.
They have no idea.
They don't know what it was like to be a teenager or someone in their early 20s, and they're stupid.
Yeah.
But then they become very wise all of a sudden once some life happens. And so I think that that's something that I think we have a better mentor relationship now. I would also say that I had some really great life group leaders early on in life after Jenna and I first got married that were really influential in our early marriage, and that's really helped as well. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, same. I mentioned it. That's kind of why I brought up was parents. I think we all said they're the fundamental driving your values and kind of your worldview from an early age. But they're your parents, so sometimes hearing that is repetitive and it just has less value.
Right, right.
So for me, there was a guy, Paul Mazurlin was his name, but he came into my life, and I know you know him.
I know Paul
as well.
really well. Yeah.
And for middle school, high school, he mentored me and had done that for a lot of different guys. And one of his big things was he pushed very hard. Whatever you're going to do, what is going to be your impact? What is going to be your ministry? No matter what career or talents or skills you have, what is that going to impact? And that stuck with me through high school and college when we'd hang out and he'd talk and he'd say, "All right, Josh, what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I'd tell him what I was thinking I was going to do. He said, "Okay." I said, "What are you going to do with that?"
Yeah.
And that was kind of always his follow-up. He didn't care what I chose, but what are you going to do with that? And that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
And so that was one, coaches throughout the time. And then when I graduated college, I was in the nonprofit world. And my first boss, the director that was over the middle school ministry, really mentored me and kind of took me under his wing, which was huge from both learning that, but also him and his wife. And then they had a kid. So my wife and I, we had just gotten married. So we had somebody that was just a little bit ahead of us in those phases to learn from, which is always great. And I think that's the other key to a mentor is finding somebody just above where you are that can kind of help propel you along as you move in that journey. That was good. And then moving back here, like life groups and, just some church people are always huge. And having somebody to look up to say, okay, here's some things I want to emulate in my life on what I see them doing. Which is always.
I think you brought up something that's very important is if you can really latch on to someone who's just one step in life ahead of you, it's invaluable to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've got kids that are 1 to 8, but I'm looking at people with 10 to 20-year-old kids and who've been married not 10 years like we are, but 20 years. So 10 years ahead of me. And those are the people that I'm finding the most value out of because yeah, like people that are my parents' age or whatever, they're 25 years ahead of me, and things have changed or whatever, or it's been a while since they've been in my shoes. But the people who are 10 years ahead of me,
they still remember.
They remember everything. They learned a lot through it. They just got out of what I'm in.
Right.
And so it's very, very fresh. So one of my best friends right now, his name's Matt. We get together all the time, and he's 10 years ahead of me. He's been married 20 years or whatever. So he's just the guy I need to be asking questions that are applicable today.
Yep.
Not the ones that are going to be applicable 10 years that I could ask, my parents or whatever.
Yeah. For us, same as like our oldest is a sophomore. Having some friends that have some kids in college, it's great to say, okay, what do we need to know?
Right,
what are the things you dealt with? All those things. It's so helpful to have those in that transition.
Have you ever thought about how your financial choices reflect what truly matters to you? At Hicks & Zerker Capital Management, we believe that integrating your values and dreams with your financial future is key to achieving peace of mind and confidence. When you engage in deep conversations with us, you'll start to see how your money can support the things that matter the most in your life. Our holistic approach means that your financial plan is more than just numbers. It's a personalized blueprint that evolves with you. You'll have a dedicated team of professionals tailored to your unique needs, all focused on crafting an investment portfolio designed to help you achieve your specific goals. Plus, our on-staff retirement life coach offers guidance to empower you toward a fulfilling retirement that goes beyond just financial security. Ready to transform your relationship with money? Join us at hzcapital.com and let's embark on this journey together. Now, back to the show.
So let's shift gears to talk about just why mentoring the next generation is so important, because I really feel like it is. I feel like that's something we should all be doing in many different ways. But I think something that it's just good to get our mind around is that there's just so much information everywhere. We live in the era of artificial intelligence. We live in the era of the internet. Information's everywhere, but you know what's not? It's wisdom. It's the application of the information that's not everywhere. And I think that's where humans are very, very important. And mentors are very, very important. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, let me, I just want to share something with you. I actually just read this yesterday. AARP just came out with a new study, some new data on loneliness, and it's called Escalating the Challenge of Loneliness in People Over 45. And as we know, it's not just people over 45. We see this epidemic all over. And this is a quote. And of course, the data would say that loneliness is escalating. It's an epidemic in our country. And so this is a person, this is a 60-year-old guy who's just, that he quoted about his interaction with AI, which you just mentioned, Austin. And he says this, he goes, with AI, I could just stay home by the fire, interact with it, and think I'm getting my social interaction when I'm actually just talking to a trained robot.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But it's more convenient that way. I'm yet to have an argument with AI, so it's less frustrating than some people and even good friends.
Yeah.
So I love the honesty about that, but it's true of what's happening with technology.
Yeah. It makes it easier to connect.
Yeah.
But
it's
not
just
as
easier.
Fulfilling to connect. Yes.
That's the problem. It's easier. It's more convenient. I can just stay home. I'm not going to have an argument with Alexa.
Yep.
It's just...
Or social media for that matter.
Yeah, or anything like that.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And so... but it's dangerous. It's like what you talked about, Austin. We need human interaction. We need human social connections. And that's where mentoring comes in. That's why it's so important. There's just certain things that we just cannot get from AI.
Right.
It's just, it's just the reality of that. So that's kind of the bad news. That's what's happening with technology. But at the end of the day, I think in terms of the wisdom and instilling in that and living a better life and a good life, we just need those older people who are, have gone ahead of us.
Or some of us can be those older people.
Well,
as
and
well.
that's the thing you talked about, our need for it. Well, we are also at a phase of life ahead of somebody else.
Exactly.
Right? We don't, I know, and you get so caught up in, here's what I need. Well, we also have a lot of value we can pass on and being willing and open to do that for someone, because that's also what we're seeking as well.
Exactly.
And so you can be mentored and mentor someone at the same time.
Yes,
because they're looking for something different than what you're striving to achieve because they're in a different life phase.
So
don't assume they absorb these things naturally. And it goes back to my oldest was getting his driver's license. I was like, he's watched me drive for 16 years. It should be fine. No, not necessarily the case because I haven't imparted that wisdom to him yet on certain aspects. I just assumed he absorbed it by sitting in the same car as me driving. That's not how it works. And that's why mentoring is important, is just because we're in proximity to somebody does it mean they're picking up on what we would love for them to understand and learn from us?
Absolutely.
That's a really good point.
So let's shift gears for our last little segment here to talk about the practical ways, the ways that we can really start mentoring today. So we kind of just talked about it a little bit. Look at both ends of it. Look where you are and look to find someone to be a resource for you.
Right.
But also look for someone to be mentoring to, right?
Yes, right.
So whether that's, take the intern out for coffee.
Yeah.
Like that's a great opportunity. You're ahead of them in life and in a career. Be a resource to them, offer to be a resource to them, but also go find someone that you look up to who's been through it too.
Mm-hmm.
Someone with older kids, someone with a longer marriage, someone with more life experience. So kind of try and bookend both of that ends of things. But one thing that's nice is, Scott, you're a great resource because you have a lot of, accreditation and research and studying on this, but you don't need to be looking for, a title or a program to be mentor. Anyone can be a mentor to anyone,
That's
right?
And that's
you said it
at
earlier.
any phase in life.
At any phase in life.
Yes.
You said it earlier. You don't need a program.
Right.
You don't need an agenda.
Just have a conversation.
You don't need a curriculum or a schedule.
That's so
Right.
You're going to go have coffee and you're going to glean information
That's right.
from someone who has experience beyond where you're at.
Yeah.
That's all it takes is the willingness to say, hey, I got some time.
Yep.
Right.
And we could just sit down, no agenda, let's just talk. Because from that, you're going to find,
Yep.
they're going to ask the questions they really want to know.
Yeah.
Or if you're the one looking to be mentored, you have questions already. Right? They don't
Absolutely.
need to show up with a book, hey, let's fill this out together. No, just meet with them, give them time. That's what they need.
And do things regularly, I think, helps too.
Yes.
If you can
That's right.
become, friends with someone, have a regularly set up coffee, lunch, beer, grab a beer after work, whatever you want to do, but just make it once a month, go
Right.
catch up for an hour. It doesn't need to be a week-long thing, doesn't need to be a whole day.
Yep. That's
Catch up for an hour
Yeah.
about life. And it is amazing the compounding wisdom that you're going to get, or hopefully that you're able to instill
Yes.
you're on the other end of that
Yes.
to someone else. So it's small, consistent actions there.
Yeah. Sometimes, in mentoring too, it's, I think I saw this probably mostly with my parents. Unfortunately, you're going to see some things that you don't want to become. You know what I mean? You'll see some habits and some things maybe in your mentors or just even in the people around you that you're like, okay, I really don't want to live a life like that.
Yeah.
So we had a family when I was growing up that was extremely wealthy, but their family was a mess. They were alcoholics. They, they had tons of money, but they just, and so I kind of saw that as something I didn't want to become or something I didn't want to do. So even in mentoring, sometimes you watching the people around you that are older than you, sometimes it's not only getting good advice and wisdom, but it's actually also, saying, okay, this is something
You don't
I
have to be
don't
perfect to be
Right.
a mentor, right? It's,
Being
that's a good
open
point
and
too.
honest
To say, hey,
Yeah.
look, here's, that next age group, here's the things I messed up. I wish I would have known this. Then let me help you stop from doing
That's
the same thing I
probably
did.
the best mentor you can have is someone who royally messed up,
who's willing
to tell you.
willing to be honest.
Or someone who said, I've been married 20 years. Here's what I messed up in the first 10, so you don't have to do it
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, mentoring. Scott, any other final thoughts on just the whole concept of mentoring?
Yeah, one thing I just want to introduce, I just think this is absolutely fascinating, but this came from Arthur Brooks, who's a writer, but he got it from some research back in the 60s and 70s. But there's this thing called fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And it's really the thought that when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's the way your brain works. And so you have tons of energy. You can problem solve like crazy. You can do things with speed. You can see patterns. There's lots of great, and this is why we need 20s and 30-year-olds in our companies and in our businesses. But what happens once you get into your 40s, your brain starts to change.
Yeah.
You can't do that stuff so well, but what you can do is consulting, coaching, teaching. And so we kind of move. And so it's actually just built into our DNA to actually, as we get older, to actually become mentors, to actually be teachers, to be coaches. And this is when I'm working with individuals that are in the second half of life, we talk about this all the time. When they're thinking about what they're going to do next, or they're going to maybe get out of that career because they're frustrated because they can't think like they could when they were in their 20s and 30s. But what they can do now is they can teach, they can consult, they can mentor. And so I think that's just fascinating that's the way God has created our brains.
Absolutely.
So, as we go along. So again, we're built for it.
We're
built for this mentoring.
It's a good thing.
So, yeah.
Josh, any thoughts?
No, I think don't don't think you're ever too busy to be a mentor or be mentored.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't take a huge time commitment. Just being consistent and just being open and available both ways to be mentored too, but then take your wisdom and pass it on as well.
Yeah. I would say my final thought is just look at the people in the generation behind us specifically and say, these are the people who are going to be running your company. These are the people who you're going to be working with for a long time. These are the people who are going to be in government leadership positions and church leadership. They need wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
They need life experience that they don't have, right?
Yep,
that's right.
So specifically encouraging myself to continue to pour into people rather than always be poured into. So well, that's mentoring. If you enjoyed today's episode, if it was insightful for you, hit that subscribe button in your podcast player. Be sure to follow us on social media so that you get all of our content, and we'd love to stay in touch with you there. And always feel free to check out azcapital.com to learn more about what we do at Hicks and Zerker Capital Management. And until next episode, have a good one.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you.
Thank you for joining us at the Wealth Mindset Show, where we tackle the complexities of finance and life planning to help you align your wealth with your values. We hope today's conversation provided value and clarity as you navigate your financial journey. Your hosts work for Hicks and Zerker Capital Management, and all opinions expressed by them or any podcast guest are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks and Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks and Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment, and any investor attempting to mimic index performance would incur fees and expenses that could reduce returns. Securities investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal, and there is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.